thing here is that we're looking for this lateral step over the pole. This is really, really good for injury prevention or rehab. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about conditioning and specifically using groundwork for conditioning. Good boy. Okay. Hi, friends. Welcome back. So today I want to talk a little bit about conditioning and using groundwork for conditioning. Conditioning is essentially any time that we need to give our horses like a workout or some exercise, some cross training without actually getting on. And so there are really kind of two, well, actually, we can condition under saddle as well, but today we're talking specifically about the groundwork version. So we're not getting on. There are really two main ways that we can condition our horse. We can do aerobic conditioning, which is kind of what I was just doing here with the round pen. And generally, when I do aerobic conditioning, I'm looking for kind of my horse's threshold for what they can handle, and then I'm just pushing them a little bit past that. So generally, I find like a horse that's completely out of condition that doesn't do any work at all, like has been retired or something along those lines, can do about 2 minutes or so of trot before they start to get pretty winded. So that's generally where I kind of take them right to that, kind of where they start puffing and puffing a little bit. A horse that's in light work, like a lot of our school horses, can generally do about 5 minutes. And then horses that are in heavy work, competition horses, etc., can generally do 10 or even more minutes before they get pretty tired. And so what I'm doing with these horses when I do this is I am giving them an opportunity to get all the way to kind of aerobic exertion, puffing and puffing, really breathing kind of hard. And then I give them a pretty long break. And the important thing here is that you let them return completely to their normal um, breaths per minute, their normal breath cycle, before you then switch directions and repeat. And so generally I'll do trot to the left until they're huffing and puffing, wait for as long as it takes for them to get back to their normal breath cycle by just walking several laps. And then I'll switch directions and trot that way. And then I'll also add in the canter as well. The other important thing to note here is that I like to do this with either a round pen or a lunge line. If you don't have those accessible to you or those aren't something you're comfortable with, then I have some resources coming out for that. If you're interested, keep an eye out because those are coming out really soon. There's a Groundwork Intensive we're coming out with that's going to help you learn how to use all of those tools correctly, as well as so many other things. And then to add to that, there are some things that we can do for muscular conditioning. And so this is generally done a little bit more slowly. We're really working on building the top line and their core and all of their stabilizer muscles throughout their body. This is really, really good for injury prevention or rehab. And so for this, I have three main exercises I'm going to show you today. So the first is sort of a serpentine. So we're going to set up a long line of poles and we're just going to crisscross back and forth over the poles as many times as we can. And the really important thing here is that we're looking for this lateral step over the pole where a horse has to actually cross their legs under their body to lift them over the pole. You can make this a little bit harder by actually raising the poles off the ground. Just a couple of inches is plenty if your horse is really good at this already. The second exercise that I like to do is just a long line of walk or trot poles and just putting in as many as you can in a long row. So whatever you have available to you, make sure the spacing is super even and that it's a space that works for your horse. So if you're doing this with different horses, reset them to make sure it's an amount of space that is comfortable for your horse to take just in one stride. And you're just going to walk them straight over the poles. The key here is that they keep their head down because this is what's going to allow their back to lift and their core to engage properly. If this is getting too easy for your horse, you can also raise just one side of each pole. So for example, you might alternate right, then left, then right, then left, risers under the poles all the way down the line. And then the third one I'm going to suggest today is the sort of cross or the plus side. And so for this one, you can set up your pole in a cross shape. And if you need to use a bigger circle for any reason, you can spread them out as big as you need to. You can use also while you're riding as well, walk, trot, and canter. It's a really, really good one to work on your steering and your balance and your bend. But on the ground, we're just going to be basically lunging our horse around. And again, if this is too easy, you can totally raise one side or the other of these poles. And then one last little bonus one is I really like this zigzag one. I've been using this a lot lately, so I just put the poles instead of in a long straight line, I put them in a little bit of a zigzag, and this kind of combines the serpentine with the trot poles, and that your horse kind of has to laterally step over, and it's so good for their proprioception because they really have to figure out where those feet are in space in order to not knock any poles because they're just not super predictably laid out. So anyway, there's a whole bunch of different ideas for you. If you want more resources like this, I am coming out with a Groundwork Intensive, so make sure to look out for that. There's a link below to more information about that. If you're watching this in the future, I will be doing it again once a year. So definitely keep your eyes peeled for that one. And then also, one of the really, really big takeaways from this for me is that you need to understand how your horse's top line works in order to do this correctly. And that is what we're going to be talking about next. So go watch that. And until next time, make sure to hug your horse for me.